recording here and hand it over to you, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Max. So yeah, appreciate you guys letting us chat. So yeah, I have Katya, our data intern here, who's also going to be joining me. But yeah, so work for City of Syracuse, our Office of Analytics, Performance, and Innovation. One of the things that we help manage is Syracuse's open data portal, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. And yeah, if I'll hand it over to Katya, if you can share your screen and get kicked off.
Yes, give me one moment. Actually, Jason, do you have the presentation?
Yeah, I do. I can share my screen. That's
Okay,
fine.
I have it in PDF format and it's not making it easy.
Okay, and your audio is a little messed up. It's a little glitchy for me. I don't know if it is for anyone else too.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just because your phone is too close to your computer. Sometimes if it sounds like radio interference, or sometimes if you like move your phone away, it solves the problem.
All right. All right. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, awesome. We'll just get this started. All right, cool.
Yeah, so very excited to talk to you guys today. My name is Katya, and today we'll be going over a bit of our data portal, why we're here, what you can find on it, and how it might be useful to you. Yeah, I hope you've met Jason. I'm Katya. We both work at the API team in Syracuse. So this is the front page of our website, and you can find it at Open Data Syracuse at data.syracuse.gov. And some background on why open data even exists is basically President Obama made it a thing by promoting open data during his presidency. And then the New York State launched their open data portal in 2013. And then we launched ours 4 years later in 2007. So we're now 7 years old. So basically, the main goal of open data is to increase transparency in how governments provide services and how the kind of information the government has. And this allows parties outside of the government to also do analysis on government data, see how we're doing, basically provide third-party feedback. It also promotes people to just innovate and hopefully use this data to create cool projects that might be able to feed back and help the government. And it also just promotes the government being online and being there, as opposed to letting people make their own kind of assumptions about the things that might be going on. So currently we have 125 data sets on the open data portal. A lot of them have map data, which we will see later in this presentation. We also have 18 crime data sets from various years, budget data sets, housing related data sets, and a lot of others, as well as a lot of projects that we will also touch on. Let's see. So Jason has posted the link to the open data portal in the chat. Data.syr.gov. You can also see it on the screen. And once you go there, you can search for data according to the data sets, or you can go through the different data topics that we have curated for you, which include neighborhood data, housing, infrastructure, or you can look at the bigger categories that we have sorted. Basically, I encourage you to look around, scroll on the homepage, look through some of the tabs. They're all pretty cool. Next. Yeah, so as I mentioned, you can look at some of the more curated data topics. And if you, can I share my screen or? Okay. Let's do that. Okay, so if you click on them, for example, let's say housing or recreation, not recreation. You can, for example, see this map of all of the parks in Syracuse and all the different amenities that you can find on them. So say you're a family that has a young child and you want to find the playground. Well, you can see all of the playgrounds. They are marked with this blue pin. Then we have similarly gazebos, art, and many other things that are in the Syracuse parks. If we scroll down, we can see more about the Syracuse art. We're going to see a bit more on this later in this presentation, but this is an example. If you're a biker, you can see all of the bike routes, and how safe they are in Syracuse, and just some summary statistics. The other topics are very similar. For example, housing. We have maps of when the garbage gets picked up. If I can find it. Never mind, it's in neighborhoods. My bad. But yeah. So we have a lot of already pre-made maps here for you guys and for other residents. But what's exciting is that if we go back to the homepage, we can look for a data set that we're interested in. And I personally like art. So I'm going to go to the public art data set. And you can explore this more in depth, besides just the pre-made stuff that we have for you. And for example, you can filter it. And it's kind of hard to find, but it's this filter icon that comes up on this left-hand bar. And you can, first let's style it, because right now we just have all of these blue dots. And if you click on the dot, you can see, okay, here's all the information about that particular art piece. So here I can see it's a mural. It's on this address. It was made by Valenzuela Cayetano. I mispronounced her name, but I'm so sorry. As well as the year that it was created. So, for example, let's say I'm a big fan of murals. I can go by type, and suddenly, okay, we have all the different types in their own color. So sculptures are purple, murals are red, which makes it a lot easier for me to see all of the different types of art that Syracuse has. And if you need a legend, it's right up here on the right-hand side. And now, so this looks fancier and better than before. But this is a smaller data set. We also have ones where it's like thousands and thousands of data. But for the sake of example, you can also filter it. So say I want, again, to go by murals, and I want to find the type. And then you go to mural. And then now it makes all of the other points gray, and you can just focus on the ones that you care about. So type is a categorical variable, which basically means there's different types of it, and they're basically like words, right? You have murals, sculptures, monuments, they're all words. But what if I want to filter by the year? So I'm gonna filter by year erected, which basically means when that art piece was put into place. For murals, it's usually the same, but if it's a statue, maybe it was made like a few years before it was actually put up. And so here, what's fun is you can use the slider to kind of filter out the murals that were older or the murals that are newer, again, by the year that they were put up. And if this is difficult, like this is a big scale, like I don't really, personally, the 1900s, they were a long time ago. So I'm gonna say, okay, I want the scale to be from 2000 to 2022. So now I can see the more recent murals. And it's much easier to see like, oh, here's all of the cool stuff that has been put up over the last few years. So that is a cool functionality. And you can still see the styling. You can also turn the styling off to bring it back to default if you'd like. Another cool thing that filtering allows you to do is you can open this table and you will be able to see, this is easier to see with type actually. So now I haven't, so this is the whole data set, the table that the map is using in order to make that cool graphic. And if we go to mural, we can filter by mural, and now suddenly you can also just see all of the murals and nothing else. So this table matches the filters that you apply to the map, which might be useful for research. Other cool things you can do here is you can select an area, and I'm gonna remove my filter just so we have more data points. I'm gonna turn on styling because it looks nicer. But we have this area selection. So if you know you live in a certain area, you want to see what art is around you, and you only want to focus on that, you can draw a circle, double click to end it, and then you can filter to it. You can also increase the distance. I don't think it matters as much in a circle, but you can also draw a line.
And Katya, could you show real quick, like after they have the filtered data, how they could export that?
Yes, of course. So yeah, you can draw a line, you can do a point, you can filter in those ways as well. And then, okay, I like this data set. I want to play with it more, maybe in my code. I can go back into more info on the left-hand corner side, and I can download it and select whichever format you'd like. I would recommend CSV. It's very easy to work with. And then finally, what if you look at this data and you say, okay, well, most of this makes sense. Artist last, artist first, okay. But what's the difference between year created and year erected? Okay, well, I can go to full details. And then here you have kind of the descriptive page of the data set. You can go back to the map by clicking view map. You can still download it from here. Or you can click read more. And then here you can find the summary, some background on the data, as well as the data dictionary, which will tell you, hey, this is what all of the like short column names actually mean. So year created is the year the public feast was created, and installed is when it was erected. Also, I don't know if you guys know about TNT areas, but it does not actually mean explosives. It means tomorrow's neighborhoods today. So this is very useful if you have a data set that is more complicated than just art and you don't know what the columns might mean. Okay, I think that was all that I wanted to cover here. So I will hand it off to Jason to show you more how you can incorporate this into your code.
Sure. Thanks so much, Katya. All right, so I am going to share again. Just gonna move that down here. All right, cool. So just because I'm going to be switching back, I'm just going to stay on this screen because I'm going to go to some other tabs. Another one I wanted to look at was exploring the API. So each one of these data sets has their own API endpoint. They're similar to each other, like they're all the same format, and you can kind of swap them out. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to highlight with you guys. I'm going to focus on the Syracuse Athletic Courts data set just because it's smaller and it's a little easier to manage. Like Katya mentioned, some of our data sets are huge. Our code violations data set is over 100,000. Our constituent request data set, Syracuse City Line, it's over 100,000. People saying, hey, Jason's yard is a mess. He needs to mow his lawn. It's just a lot. It's a really big data set. It's kind of cool, but it's kind of overwhelming. So that's why I focus on some of the smaller ones for these demos. So to start, we're just going to go to the data set and we're going to go click on the exploring the API. So I have the data set up already. So just on here where Katya was already, I'm going to show you a couple different ways. On this page, you would just go to the more, oh, no, I lied, sorry. We're going to go down to the I want to view API resources. If you're back on the map page, we're just going to go to the I want to use this little tab, and we're going to view API resources. And I'm just going to click on the Open an API Explorer. So here we can get the full response if we want. This just is everything on there, like all of the data set in JSON format. If we are doing a application where, say, we want to get, I don't know, basketball courts near us. Maybe we want to kind of pass in a parameter. So I'm going to just do pass in, where court type is equal to, oh, I thought I had basketball already. So is equal to basketball. And then I can specify which fields I want to get back. Say if I don't care what size court it is, and I don't care when it was last improved. I just want to know the park, court type, latitude and longitude, because I want to map this. Then I'm just going to do the same thing, get response, and it's going to give me all of that. And then I have the query URL up here. So I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard, paste it in here, just so we can kind of visualize it a little bit. And this will be our JSON response. So then in our code, we can reference, okay, I want field, let's see. So I want, features, and then under attributes, I want park, and then I want lat and long. So now I have like the name of the park, I have latitude and longitude. That's also going to be in the geometry section of the JSON also. They're just the same thing, just kind of two different formats. So a couple of things that you can do with that. We have a few tutorials. One of them is using, so it's specifically we use ArcGIS for our mapping. So this tutorial makes this kind of interactive map. This is with the bike safety ratings from Syracuse Metropolitan Transportation Commission. So it just kind of gives us the road segment, and then it'll just say like how it is. It's poor, fair, blue is excellent, green is that. So the code just kind of takes us through. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but just using, let's see, their JavaScript library, just kind of how we made that. We set the base map, we set the view, and then we're calling that data set. We're bringing this in as a feature layer, and then we're kind of stylizing it based on, we're adding the pop-up information, and then we're going to stylize it with different colors here. So we're setting like, hey, excellent, make it blue, good, make it green. So that, obviously you can use the code, you can modify it, you can map and do something else. So that's with the ArcGIS kind of library to do that. There's one other project that I wanted to highlight. This is not a city one. This was actually a local reporter made this. I think it's really cool. So I like sharing that also. It's also using our API. So John Moss is a reporter for Syracuse.com. He made a project that lets him, really anyone, but I think mainly he uses it. So it looks up a property. I'm just going to look up City Hall just for kind of ease of not putting anyone's personal information out there. So I'm kind of, putting in the number, obviously, and then I'm submitting this, and it's getting from the kind of tax information, it's getting the owner, it's also finding out, hey, that owner also owns these properties, and it gives the information on there. It also is saying like, hey, is this property on the rental registry? City Hall is not. As far as I know, no one is living there. Does City Hall have any code violations? No, it thankfully does not right now. And it'll also pull permits for the last 5 years. So these are permits, obviously, for public assemblies at City Hall over the last 5 years. If there's there was that explosion on the one house, this would enable reporters to just be able to quickly check it. Hey, does that property have any code violations? Was it on the rental registry? Who's the owner? What other properties do they own? It kind of gives them really quick information. And what I really like is he shared his GitHub repo with us. So he actually shares his whole code base on how he does that. He's kind of, just kind of assigning, he's setting like, hey, this is the feature layer that I'm grabbing. And let's see, in here, there's going to be, this is most of our like endpoint URL. So we use ArcGIS. So this is like, that number is for City Hall. And here is where he's passing in the different layer names. He's passing in rental registry, he's passing in code violations. So, and then it's feature server, 0, query. It's just different layers. 0 is the layer we're going to do. And then query lets us query it. So it's going to be the same URL for whatever data set. It's just the name of the data set is going to be a little different. Here we have Syracuse Athletic Courts, 8, blah, blah, blah. But again, it's that same URL up here, the feature service 0 query. And this is where we're passing in the different parameters that we have there. And spatial reference 4326, that's just latitude and longitude format. There's different ways to map stuff, but that just returns it in latitude and longitude. So I know that was kind of a lot and kind of quick, but I want to be respectful of your guys' time and your guys' class time. I did see a couple questions in the chat. But yeah, Joe, we do not really work, well, we work on civic data, yes, but not really election data. The only real election one that I have in our neighborhoods one, we just show like who people's common counselors are. We just have a map because we have a data set of just the common council boundaries and just kind of showing which one. But yeah, as far as like for different candidates, we don't really get in like, oh, this is why you should vote for so-and-so. Or even we don't really have like who's running for different counselor stuff. Just once they're elected, we add them on here. But yeah, as far as voting stuff, we don't specifically, because I think County Board of Elections does more of that. But yeah, any other questions or thoughts on any of this info?
And this is, you guys can think about this as a very large data set, right? And obviously a lot of this is mapping data related, but there is a lot of data that isn't necessarily geolocated as well. So if you're thinking of, integrating some additional data into your capstone, this can be a really great place to see, what information is available that you may not even have known that the city was offering up.
Thanks, Max. And I forgot to mention, we do have our open data inventory. If you want to find out, hey, what data sets do we even have on there? We have all of them listed here. And if they're like updated regularly or not, it'll stay here. So like Katya mentioned, just crime data, different types. And we do also periodically do civic data challenges, just kind of quick pitch. They're kind of month-long ones, and they're pretty broad. Sometimes we'll focus on one specific data set. This month's theme is just open data with generative AI. So it's very broad. I like to give people kind of fun little projects. If they want to work on something, they just win a small gift card. But I think the bigger one is we'll feature projects on our project page, and we do give folks a shout out on our city's social media. Just letting folks know, hey, this is what, Susie made, whether it's the Parks and Art map that recent developer made. So that's kind of a fun thing also. At least I think it's fun. Yeah. All right. Anything else before we jump off and let you guys get back to class? Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate all of your time and letting us present to you guys today.
Thank you guys for stopping in.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions about that? Lots of APIs out there, right? And I know that we spent some time on Monday seeing all of the different information out there, everything from Star Wars to Pokemon to Owen Wilson to some actual important city data, right? And so what we don't see oftentimes as consumers is that databases power everything, right? Everything from, hey, I'm ordering some food at a restaurant, and the waitress is ringing in my order, that all gets stored somewhere, all the way down to things that we would expect all the way up to NASA and space and how the cosmos align, right? And so oftentimes it can be easy to get lost in all of that data that's available, but something to think about for your capstones of pulling in additional data, because there are so many databases, and all that an API is, right, at the end of the day, is the interface layer to get access to that data to interact with things. So that's why Jason likes to come in, kind of show you information that's available at that local level. Caitlin, who is a program manager for us and a graduate of cohort 1, found that the finding out what your trash day is in Syracuse was actually kind of a tricky thing to do. So her capstone project was integrating with the Open Data Initiative one when it was pretty young as well, and built basically a little web app that did the geo query to look up your address, figure out when your trash day was, and make that available. So little things that you can do there, but I encourage you guys to play around with that data set. You may find something really interesting, and may find that you want to either do that as a side project or find some way to integrate it into your capstone. With all of that said, do we have any questions about yesterday's code? We will start tonight's class going through documenting it as a review, and then we are going to add some additional features. We're going to get a little bit more experience with React before we wrap this project up and move on to the next one. So any questions in general? Okay, then we can go ahead and dive in to the code from yesterday. I am going to pop open my week 13 folder, and I'm going to rename my to-do into day 2. And this is a new thing as part of our workflow. What ends up happening is when we ran that npm, the npx create react app command, it created a whole bunch of files for us. And that's really helpful, right? We were working in the source folder last night. We were in app.js. We were there modifying a couple files, everything's fine. But what we didn't see is when we did that npx create react app command, it actually installed a bunch of dependencies for React, basically a bunch of different packages and components that make up React itself and make it all work. Well, the downside to that is it is a really big folder that all of that installs into. And if I'm looking in, again, I renamed my to-do folder day 2. If I pop that open and look in my node modules and give it a second to run here, it's going to end up eating up 300 megabytes, which doesn't sound like a lot on the surface. But if we end up duplicating every single day, if we do either a new React project or duplicate the last night's React project, we're going to end up with like probably 50 copies of all of these node modules that we don't need. So when we are in the habit of creating a new day, duplicating out, doing a create React app, whatever it is, we're going to get in the habit of deleting last night's node modules so they don't end up collecting on our computer. So what I'm going to do, the other reason why we delete it here is because it takes a lot of time for it to duplicate out all of those items. You can see there are 41,000 items inside this node modules folder. That's just a lot of work for your computer to duplicate all of that out. It's actually quicker to delete it and ask it to reinstall all of those node modules than it is to start from scratch, or than it is to duplicate it. So what we're going to do, again, I'm in my week 13. I renamed my to-do folder day 2. I'm going to pop open day 2 and delete my node modules. You can either single click on it and hit Command Delete on your keyboard, or you can right click on it and pick the Move to Trash option. So I'm only deleting out my node modules. Then I'm going to go into my day 2 folder, right click on it, and duplicate that out. And you'll notice it did that very, very quickly. That is because we deleted the node modules. I'm going to rename that to day 3. And then I'm going to pop open my day 3 in my VS Code. Now, couple reminders about React. We can't use the go live button because we need to fire up the React server that we're going to be able to access all of the code. So we are going to right click and hit open an integrated terminal. Right click over on the Explorer side, go into open an integrated terminal. And then I am going to drag up my terminal so I can see it a little bit more. And I'm going to run the same command that we ran last night. But we're going to get an error when we do this. I'm going to npm run start, and it tells me React scripts command not found. That is because React scripts is one of the dependencies that Node modules was holding for us. So we deleted all of those dependencies out when we deleted Node modules. Now we got to get them back. So in our terminal, I am going to run the command npm install. And if I do that, it's going to think for a second, and you will notice the node modules folder has reappeared. That is because npm install is going to our package.json folder, and it's looking at all of these dependencies here, and it's going, oh, you need React, you need React scripts, you need all of these things. I will go reinstall them for you. So node modules is a something that Node package manager generates out, just like it generates out the package.json. And that is a project by project folder that is installing and holding all of the dependencies that npm is managing for us. So quick recap, rename the to-do folder from last night to day 2. We opened that up. We deleted the node modules from here. That's so that we don't accumulate a bunch of big files and to make it easier to duplicate out. We go back to our week 13. We duplicate our day 2. We rename it as day 3. We open day 3 in VS Code. We pop open our day 3 in the integrated terminal. In the terminal, we run the command npm install. You can ignore all of the output there. This npm install is going to regenerate out our node modules for us. It is important to note, why do we need that npm install command? Well, because when we tried to start our server up, it gave us the message React scripts command not found. That is the repercussion of deleting out our node modules, so it is faster to set our project up. So if you ever get that command, that error message, command not found, usually it can be resolved with a simple npm space install. Now that we've got them installed, we can do our npm start or npm run start. Both do the same thing. And we should get our to-do list app fired up where we left it from last night. I am going to start the live server, the live share, I mean, and dump that in chat. npm I is just a shortcut for npm install. They both do the exact same thing, just like npm run start and npm start do the exact same thing. So either one is totally fine to use. Anyone
Real
not
quick while we're
Oh, go ahead.
I was wondering, this might be too in the weeds, if you could just touch on what a package and a package manager actually does,
Yeah.
like its purpose.
Yeah, good question. So a package is, you can think about it as React. React is a framework, right? Or a library Bootstrap is a framework as well. These are things that just make it easier for us to build things faster, right? So different languages call them different things, but a package is kind of just pre-built code that someone else wrote and then provided some documentation and published their code so that you can take advantage of it. So a package could be something as small as I want to be able to pad a string and put a couple of white spaces on either side of it. That's a very specific example because it actually broke NPM a couple years ago. All the way up to something as large as React, which is an entire framework for building our code, making it React, all of that, making it the state work, all of that kind of stuff. So a package is can be a very small item, only a couple lines of code, all the way up to something as large as React. But it's just pre-made code that someone else has published and also gives us documentation on how to use it. A package manager is okay. Well, now that package is going to have different versions, right? They may publish version 1.0.0 that uses a system called semver or semantic versioning, where you have the major version number, the minor version number, and then the patch number. So you can see right now we are using React version 18 that's the major version. The minor version is version 3, and then the bug fix is 0.1. And so what Node Package Manager is doing is not only saying, hey, this is the version of React that you are on, so we will install that. They're also looking for all of the dependencies of React itself. So they're saying, hey, for React to work, we also need the virtual DOM installed. That's not listed as a dependency of our project, but because we use React, React may have its own dependencies, and so it installs the dependencies of that. So Node Package Manager, NPM, their website is npmjs.com, is not only managing all of the versions for us, it is managing all of the dependencies of the dependencies that we have in our project. Did that spark any other questions, or did that answer your question?
I just had like not that it was super important. If you mentioned it similar to how Bootstrap works, is Bootstrap just being hosted online and it's accessing that database or that library from like that live hosted site versus being directly installed into the application?
Yeah, so NPM, they're basically when you're working with Bootstrap in React or other front-end frameworks, you have the option of either referencing it out on the CDN and pulling in their own CSS, or you do have the option of installing Bootstrap using NPM, at which point you are self-hosting Bootstrap. So you do have the option of installing it either way. There are some frameworks though that do not support that and only support if you host it or if you install it directly into your package.
Where do I find that for Bootstrap? Is that right on their website?
If you head to npmjs.com and do a search for Bootstrap, it should come up. And it has 4 million weekly installs. So that's usually a pretty good sign. And then they will give you a breakdown of how you can install it with NPM. And then it depends on the framework, how you import that package and start using it. We will get a little bit more experience with packages, installing them as we get into the back end. But they should have some documentation down here on how to get started.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, NPM is something that we will be spending more time in as we get going. Any other questions? Anyone not have their to-do list app running from last night?
Can you say the npm command again? I think I wrote the wrong thing.
Yep. So we used two commands. We used npm space install and hit enter on that. And that install basically regenerated out our node modules for us, all of the dependencies and their dependencies. And then npm start or npm run start, they do the same thing. And that should fire up the server for us.
Thank you. I did npm start first.
Yes.
So,
And I actually did that as well in my terminal. And the reason I did that is because all of you should be familiar with that error message, React scripts command not found. That should be cemented in your brain of, if that is happening to me, run install first and then try and restart it, and that should fix the problem. Any other questions? Anyone not have this showing in their browser? Okay, let's dive into a review of where we were last night. We took the visual approach last night. Tonight, we're going to take out the numbering approach. So we are going to say number one, and you'll notice that comments in React are kind of interesting. It depends what part of the file you are in. If you're in the JavaScript part of it, it makes sense that you use the JavaScript comments. But as we get down into the HTML section, it's a little bit harder to put comments in. React doesn't really like HTML comments. So you may see the syntax be a little different there. It's because React prefers JavaScript comments to HTML comments. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say number one, import use state hook from React. You'll hear a lot of the React community talk about hooks. 2 or 3 years ago, roughly, React pushed out a new way to integrate in with React itself to be able to access React functionality, to be able to hook into things that were already built. So a hook just means something that React is providing for us, that we are able to reach into via an import, basically reach into the React package to get some functionality that is already built out for us. So we say number two, create a function component that uses some JS and returns HTML to show to the user. JSX, literally the letters JSX are the syntax, is the name of the syntax that React uses in their languages, in their code. Technically, it's possible to use React without JSX, but no one really does it. So JSX, again, is just the name of the syntax. Now, we come in and we say, number three, create a variable, create two variables from that will hold our inputted task text. The first variable holds the value of what is typed in. The second variable is a function that allows us to update the value. We need square braces around them because use state returns more than one value. So we need these square braces here because use state is giving us two things coming out of it. We set that equal to use state from number one. So this use state is lining up with this use state from up here. And the parameter use state takes is the initial value of task text. So whatever we put in here is going to be what gets set into task text when this state variable gets created. We need to use state whenever we have a value or data that should be shown to the end user. Okay, what do I mean by that? Why can't we just use a regular variable here? Whenever there is something that the user sees that we want to keep in sync so that our JavaScript variables and our HTML are always in sync with each other, and we don't have to use the DOM, we don't have to use any inner HTML. All we do is we say, hey, this is some special data, some special variable that because the user is interacting with it, we are going to do that through state instead of doing it as a variable and having to update the document object model ourselves. Questions on this up to this point? Okay. Number 4, I will not be as verbose as number 3. We do the same thing to create another state variable, but this time we set the initial value to an array because we will be storing the list of tasks in this variable. Now we come down here and we say create function for adding a task, but ignore it until called. Right? Just like any other function in JavaScript, none of this code runs until we ask that function to run. Now we come down and we say number 6, hit the return of our component. This is what will get shown to the end user. Now we come down here and we see something funky going on. You'll notice the comment style changes a little bit. That's again because React prefers JavaScript comments over HTML comments. So in here, we say number 7, tie the form submission to the function in number 5. This, the curly braces, say to React, switch from HTML to some JS value. JS code, I'll say. So these curly braces here are saying, oh, add task is not just regular HTML, it is tying it to the add task from up here. Now we come down and we say number 8, tie the value of this input to the state from number 3. And we come in here and we say number 9, on change of this input, every letter press, set the value of the input into state so we can control and access what is typed in. And I'm going to just say this is called a controlled input when we link the onChange and value to state in React. Now we come into the submit. So we say number 10, user submits task. We come back up and we say number 11, this function now runs. prevent the page from refreshing. And this is where it gets a little funky. We get into 13. Make a new array that has a copy of the current task array spread out into it. That's what these 3 dots are saying. The square braces are saying make that new array. And then we also include an add to the end of the array the task text stored in state from number 8, 9, and 3. What do I mean by that? The value here is tied to the task text up here, which is tied to the set task text, which is all interrelated. So 8, 9, and 3 are all kind of tied together. Then take that new array and set it into the tasks from number 4. So we're taking that, setting it into tasks. Tasks is now updated. Because tasks is updated, React comes down all the way to this map and says, okay, 14 map, which is a type of loop, over the tasks from number 4. And what we are doing is we're saying 15 for each task in the array, return out a list item with the task text in between the text. And with all of that said, when we come in here and type in ABC and DEF, we see those items show up. So out of all 15 steps, do we have any questions on how this is working, on the user flow, on term definitions, on anything there? Okay. We are going to make this app a little bit more functional. We are going to make the ability to mark a task as done. So we're going to get into kind of some ternary, some styling, some cool stuff there. But before we do that, let's go ahead and jump into attendance. The secret word tonight is key, K-E-Y, because that is going to be the first warning that we fix down here. Let's go ahead and do attendance. Secret word tonight is key, K-E-Y. Okay, so we've got this pesky warning message in the console, and it says each child in a list should have a unique key property, see method app. But we start to look in this a little bit, and this is called a stack trace. That stack trace, if I pop this open, is telling us kind of the order that it ran into these errors. So it's saying it has a problem at LI, but why, how did we get to LI? LI is an app, and app, the problem is in line 51. So if we look at line 51, after I save with all my comments and refresh and add an item, it is now actually at, oh, it still says 51. Okay, it's off a little bit. The problem is down here with my LI. What's going on with that LI? Well, React likes to have, anytime that we are using a loop to generate out content, it prefers us to use .map, because if we use a for loop, the syntax doesn't work as well in line. But we're in this loop, and React is asking for a little bit of help here. It's saying, hey, every time that we add a new item to the list, I would not like to not have to generate out every single item in the list again. I would like to only generate out the piece that has changed, the new task that got added. The problem is React is like, but I need a little bit of help keeping track of all of the items that got created. So usually when we are pulling this data in, we're actually relying on the database to generate out some unique ID. But we don't have a database here yet, right? We're just storing all of this information in an array that is in state. So this is kind of a temporary solution and not the best long-term, because if we use the index of the item in the array, what happens if we delete an item in the center of the array? Now we need to go in and re-index everything out, and React gets a little cranky about having to do that. So indexes are not the best way to keep track of keys in React. But because we don't have a database, because it's not generating out an ID, because we don't have a better, more unique way of generating a key, we are going to use index just to make that error go away, or that warning go away. So in our loop, I'm going to add in index right here. .map is actually a function that will give us not only the item as it's looping over everything, it will also give us the index of that item in the array. Once we get that index, we go to our return and we add in a key of index right here. And that, after we refresh the browser and type in a task information, you will now see we do not get a warning anymore about the key, because we are using the index of the task in the tasks array, which is coming from the map, which we are then using to tell React, hey, the key, the way to keep track of the item in the list is by using the index. Joseph.
Do you not need to use all the parameters that a function can pass?
You do not.
Is it always in the same order that like index also always needs to be the second one,
Yes.
etc.? Okay.
Yes.
I gotcha. That makes way more sense now.
Here is, yeah, the order matters. What you call those things doesn't, because it is going off of order, not going off of the name of the variable. Something that I just learned for the first time in JavaScript, if you needed access to the index, but you didn't need the task itself, don't follow me on this, just an example. You can actually leave an empty comma there.
That was my second question.
And then you could do something like index here. I don't know why that's not working though, because that is valid in JavaScript. So I'm surprised you can't do that in JSX in React. Because you can normally do. I thought for sure you could do that. Huh. Anyway, I will look that up during the break. It may be only a feature in newer versions of JavaScript. Anyway, I'll figure that out down the road. But we're not just pulling index out from thin air there, that the map function is what is providing it. And then to your point, order does matter in declaring those parameters and arguments. Okay, so we need to set out a task, right? And as with our capstones, it's really important, and the New York Times assignment and all of that, to set our task out and have it anchoring us. So what I would like to do is make it so that I can cross one of these tasks off by hitting a done button on each item. So we break that down at an engineering level, right? And we go, okay, what do we need to do to make that happen? We need to add the button. We need to make the button on click. We need to update the data based off of that. And then we need to make the task item cross out. So let's dive into that. First thing we need to do is add a button so I can mark any one of them off as done. Where do I want to add that done button?
At the end of the list item.
The end of the list item. Because this is what is controlling every list item that is coming out, right? So I'm going to add a button here that says done. Right, not worried about interface at this point, user interface. We're not doing any fancy design. So we add in our done button and we go, all right, first item, check it off the list. We've added the done button to each one of them. What's item number 2? We need to make that done button do something. So that is going to be an on click. Now, just like our on change here, we could do that function right in line. We could, this is what it's called, an anonymous function, because we didn't name the function. What did we name a function on? We named the function called add task. So React lets you do things in line. They would let me add an on click right to this button, or I can do an on click and say done button clicked. Where is that done button clicked going to live? That is going to live up here. And I will say console.log done button click. I will console log done button clicked as a string. If everything works, I save, I come over here, I click on my done button, and it is now marked as, it is now logging out done button clicked. Okay, now I have to update the data, this is number 3, update the data in my tasks to mark that item as complete. But before I can mark that item as complete, I need to know what done button are we clicking on. We have solved this before by coming in and adding a data index and pulling that out of the document object model. We would say document get element by ID or event.target get attribute. That is a little hacky though. React has a better solution for us. React will actually allow us to pass some data into this function. The way we do that is we add a function in here that allows us to go to done button clicked and send in the index. Where is this index coming from? It is the same index that we're using in the key. It's actually coming from the tasks.map. So we still want the done button clicked to run, but we want to send in what button was clicked on, the index. Now we can add the index to our done button clicked and say done button clicked and add in the index so we know what done button was clicked. I will go over that in 1 second. But what should happen is if I click the done button here, I get done button clicked 1. And if I click the very first item in the list, I get done button clicked 0. So a couple modifications I made here. The on click down here, I changed that syntax a little bit so that I could actually say in my done button clicked, pass in the index. Then I came up to my done button clicked, added the index as the parameter, and then logged that out here. I'm going to pause there, let everyone catch up for a second. 3 steps. Modify the on click to pass in the index. That's 1. Update your index in your parameters. That's 2. And then log out your index so that you can test if it is working. That's 3. If it is working, you should be able to click on either done button in the interface and see the index of the done button that you're clicking on. Does anyone need help or cannot see their index logging out when they click on one of the done buttons? Okay. Now that we know what done button is getting clicked on, we can start to update that information. But tasks are a little tricky to update because they are in state. We know that we can't modify tasks directly. What we end up having to do is use the set tasks function to make the state react to those changes in the data. So we come down into our done button clicked function, and we are going to make a copy of all of the items that are in that array. So we say const updated tasks is going to be a new array. And what is in the array? It is all of the current tasks. Now we've kind of cheated React a little bit. We said, no, we're not updating tasks itself. All we're doing is making a copy of all of the tasks that we're putting in a regular variable. Don't worry about it. It's not in state anymore. Take all the current values and tasks, spread them out into this new array, and call that new array updated tasks. Then we can go to our updated tasks, and we can use an index. Where's that index coming from? That's what we sent in. That's how we know what button it is. And now we run into a problem. What problem do we run into here? What are we trying to do at this moment?
Are we trying to get the done button to update a task or
We are.
create a new task?
And so we're trying to mark that task as done. We have cleared the hurdle of knowing what done button they clicked on. We've cleared the hurdle of not being able to update the tasks directly. So we've sidestepped state here. We've got our updated tasks. We know what the index is. What what do we do? How do we mark it as done? We could assign a true false value. So we could say, let's run with that for a second. Updated task index, and we're going to say it's done. It's true. Then go set our tasks to our updated tasks. So we say done button clicked, go make a copy of the updated tasks, update the task index to be true. It's done, it's true. Set all of the tasks back into the state. Because set tasks is jumping up to our use state, it knows that tasks has now changed. It comes down to our tasks map and it goes, oh, I got to redo all of these. I need to now show the new value of the task. So this is what happens. We come over here, we type in, we click on a done button and the text disappears. Not quite what we wanted. If I hit it again, text disappears again.
Should we create some sort of completed list?
We could, that's an idea, but now we need to maintain two lists of, I got to take it out of the first list of our items to do, and now I need to make an entirely second list to keep track of the items that are done. Not a bad idea if we kind of wanted to filter out our lists. If we wanted to, in our interface, have two separate lists, that would probably be a better data structure for that. But I don't want two separate lists. I just want to mark our items as done. So an item,
like a strike through.
a strike through, that's what we're going for. That's what we're working up to. So an item needs to have two pieces of information on it. It needs to know the name of the task, right? That's whatever we initially typed in here. But we are now realizing it needs to have a second piece of information. What is the second piece of information?
If no, I was gonna say if the button was clicked.
Yeah, if the task was marked done or not. So we now have a string that we got to keep track of the name of the task. And we also have some other piece of information associated with that, a Boolean of whether or not the task is done. What data type does that say we should be using? Because we have two pieces of information about the same thing.
Object?
An object. So,
You owe me a soda, Joe.
but we are working with that and we can still have multiple tasks in our list. So we still need an array, but we're going to modify our array. Instead of it having a string of the task text, instead we're going to put each task item into an object. That object is going to keep track of the name of the task, but it is also going to keep track of whether or not that task is done. So we got to do a little bit of refactoring here. We are going to go to our add task function, and instead of just adding in the task text, we are going to add in a new object. And that object is going to say, hey, by default, the task is not done, right? Whenever we add a task to the list, it's not automatically going to start out as done. So we say done false. And then we are going to store the name of the task into an object with the key of name. So only modifying on my computer, it's 29. We're modifying the set tasks. Sometimes in order to take one step forward, you got to take two steps back. That's what we're about to see. We changed our data structure so it knows where it's pulling that information. Now we come over here, we refresh, I type in 1, 2, 3, I hit add task. and it says objects are not valid as React child. Like, ooh, okay. What's that mean? Found object with keys done and name. All right, well, we need to update, we need to keep track of multiple pieces of information. It is not against React state rules to use an object. What it is against is when we come down here, it's like tasks, map. Tasks is still an array. It's now an array of objects, but I know how to map over an array. That's no problem. It gets our task, but our task here is now an object. And we see that because if we console log out our task, we can see the object, right? This is line 63 right here. The problem is React gets down to this task right here, and it goes, how am I supposed to show done false name 1, 2, 3? That's an object. Do you want me to show all of those keys? Do you want me to show a value in there? I don't know how to make an object show up in HTML. I'm going to crap the bed and say objects are not valid React children. React is telling you that one ain't mine. I don't know how to show it. So we come back over to the task and we say, no, we don't want you to show the entire object. We want you to only show the task's name. Where is this name coming from? That name is connected up to the name that we used up here in the state. So we go ahead and save that. We come over here, we refresh. I type in 1, 2, 3, and now all of a sudden React is happy again because we are only asking it to show the name of the task, and it goes, oh, name is a string. React, I know how to show strings, no problem, I'll use that. So we set that in there and we are good to go. Okay, now we took our 2 steps backwards. We're kind of back to where we were at, but now because we have our data structure working as an object, we can come in here and instead of saying updated task index equals true, we can access that done property that we already set up on the object. So in here, I add in my .done equals true. I save that. I come over here. I type in 4, 5, 6. I hit my add task button. I click my 1, 2, 3. Nothing happens. I get my done button clicked. Okay, what's going on here? Let me log out my updated tasks. I click the done button. I pop this array open, and the dones are set to true. Like, great, that's in state, it's updating, it's got all the information I want, it's setting it to done. Doesn't look any different. What do we need to do to bring this project home? What's the last step we need?
Get rid of the done button.
Either get rid of the done button, but how do we show a task is done?
Oh, the strike through.
The strike through, right? And yes, we could get rid of the done button so React is kind of cool though. Before inline styles, they were like, yeah, you can get away with them, but we would prefer you to put that in your CSS. React kind of reverses that out. React says, hey, JSX is kind of really powerful because we can use JavaScript in places we couldn't use JavaScript before. We can now use JavaScript in our CSS, just like we can use JavaScript in our HTML. This is how we do it. We come into that list item, and I'm going to add my style tag here. But React, instead of using styles as strings, React says, no, you can use style as an object. And what we want to do is say, hey, the style of that list item is going to say, hey, the text decoration, and you'll notice we aren't using dashes here. React takes any CSS property, removes the dashes, and camel cases it instead. So we say text decoration, which is a CSS property. And what we want to do is say, hey, if the task is done, we want to show it as a line through. But if it is not done, don't add any property to it. Just be an empty string. This is a ternary operator. We've seen ternaries before. They're like inline if statements. We're saying if this task is done, then do a line through it. If it is not done, do an empty string. We come over here. Our line through them is already in there. We can add a new task. We can hit the add task button. Can even click the done button and have it add a line through it. And just like that, we have completed our to-do app. Any questions on this? Okay, let's go on break, be back at 7:25, and we will dive into what is next after that.
Max, I think I know what, I think it's supposed to be dot map, parentheses, I think I did 2 extra parentheses there. And then an underscore and comma. At least that's what ChatGPT has said.
I'm wondering if there's an ES8 feature that I'm using that it supports not putting that in.
Yeah, that's all I got back from it. It didn't seem to really, other than that one response, it didn't really seem to have anything for yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it just that was the only thing that it gave me. It was kind of that was, I think, for JavaScript. But again, that was with GPT-4, so I don't know if that has, if ES8 was out yet. So I think that's only from April to 23.
I'll let you know if I can find anything, because I actually ran into that like a week or two ago and was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that that syntax was even valid. But now I think I'm on something. So I will see if I can find it.
All right.
So we are going to push you out of the nest a little bit. We are going to yeet you into getting your own React project up and running. If you head over to the if you head over to Canvas, and I will post the link in the chat, there is a new assignment open for you called React Yeet. And the good news is I am yeeting you while still being here for support. If you get stuck on any of these steps, if you're looking at this and you're like, I don't know how to do any of this, I am here to answer questions for you, but I'm going to give you a little time to work on these steps. You're going to create a new project. Make sure you're CD'd to the right folder in terminal. Make sure that you know where you are in your terminal by PWDing your working directory. You are going to CD to the right spot where you would like to create this project. From there, you are going to open that project up and get your server running. Don't forget to close out of the to-do app. That will close out of the port that we are currently using. Then you are going to use an input and make it so whatever you type into that input shows up on the page as you're typing it in. If you would like to use a form and make the text show up on form submission, you can do that. That is a little bit more complicated than just making it so whatever letters they type up, whatever they type in, shows up in an H1. Need to use an event there. Not going to give you any hints on this yet, but basic idea, make a new React app, make an input show up. Remember what we need to use to make some data that the user is interacting with show up. Tie that to the input, and then also have that whatever they're typing up show up as an H1. Good news is if you get this done, you get to leave class a little early, but I am going to stick around here and wait for any questions to pop up. Does anyone have questions right out of the gate? All right, let the yeeting begin. If any questions pop up, let me know.